Hi everyone. I wanted to come on today and do a little how-to and then talk to you about the next swap that I want to host. This is going to be about how to stamp on tissue paper, and frankly I'm sure that most of you know how to do that. I don't think that you really need a how-to, but because I'm doing an image swap, I wanted to go over it so that if anybody doesn't know how to do this, they are aware and can participate. One of the reasons that you would stamp on tissue paper is that for collage purposes it's fabulous because the image will go over something else and then you end up with fun images one on top of the other for collage, such as, now this is just a piece of fabric, but then underneath, say, the butterfly. And what happens is when you use matte medium or Mod Podge, the tissue paper blends into the background and you don't see it. It becomes invisible. So the images like this are fabulous for collage. For the purposes of the swap, I want to use gift tissue. Now this particular type of gift tissue is just inexpensive white gift tissue that comes from Dollar Tree. Nothing fancy, absolutely nothing fancy, except it is tissue paper. It is, gift tissue has two sides to it. One side is shiny and smooth. The other side has more texture to it. And because of the shiny smooth side, the ink does not bleed. So we want to use the gift tissue. I specifically went to Dollar Tree because if you don't have gift tissue, then this is a very inexpensive project to do. Okay, now these sheets are 20 by 20 inches, so that makes it perfect for swapping. We can cut these sheets into 4 pieces, and then you end up with 4 10-inch pieces. We're just gonna, you don't want to work with a huge piece anyways. Frankly, you can get so many images on one 10-inch square that having a bunch of pieces is easier. Okay, so we would fold it up like that and cut it up, and that'll give us a 10-inch square. Now, when I stamp, I like to have, period, whether I'm stamping on paper or whether I'm stamping on something else, I like to have a rubber mat underneath me. This happens to be a silicone baking mat, and I have found it works fabulous, but a mouse pad or something else, but you need something a little squishy underneath you. They make special stamping pads and that kind of thing. This happens to work just fine for me, and I can use it for other purposes. When you stamp on tissue paper, and especially for collage, you want to use a permanent ink. This happens to be StazOn ink. It is a solvent-based ink, and it is permanent. Archival ink, some of them are and some of them aren't, but you need to make sure that it is not a dye-based ink like the Distress inks. The Distress inks are dye-based ink, and they will, if they get wet, they'll bleed. So you need to make sure whatever it is a dye-based ink. I usually use black just because I happen to like that, but you could also use brown. When you're using it in collage, black or brown is usually the best. You want to very simply take your stamp. Now this happens to be a wood block stamp. I also have some stamps that you use on the clear blocks. I'll show you how to use those in just a second, but they're all pretty much the same. When you stamp on tissue paper, you want to make sure you have another piece of paper underneath, because solvent-based ink will go through the tissue. So you want to do it reasonably carefully. You don't want to do a lot of wiggling. Especially with large stamps, I tend to turn them upside down and ink them up upside down, like so. And I always, when I have just gotten out a stamp, like to test it on a scrap paper, which I happen to have over here to the right of me. And I test it to make sure that it's getting inked up well, especially if it's a new stamp. New stamps do not ink as well as one that's been used a few times. And I tend to ink upside down. I don't push down into the pad. I ink upside down. That's just kind of how I've always done it. And there's our stamped tissue. Now, as you can see, it went on through. Especially when you use permanent ink, you want to make sure that you clean your stamp pad off. And I have a stamp scrubby, and it's got stamp cleaner on it. For the swap, we want to have multiple images. Oh, that one's got stuff I picked up somehow on it. So now this little one, I might do 2 or 3, simply because it might be fun on a project to have 2 or 3 butterflies. Okay? Always remember that you want to get these cleaned off pretty much right away. And that is how you stamp on tissue paper. It's so easy. You do want to make sure that you don't wiggle, because tissue paper is thin and it will pick up your ink and bleed. But see, it stamps very nicely, nice and clear. So now I want to talk about let me put my StazOn pad back real well. Okay. Now I want to talk about the swap. What I want to do is I want you to think about what kind of images that you have that someone else might like. I'm going to move that just so I can write. We are going to cut our tissue into 10 by 10 inch squares. Okay? And we're going to stamp 8 10 by 10 inch squares. 8 10 by 10 inch squares. With the same images. Now if you see here, the bigger images, I just put one of the bigger images. But on a few of these smaller ones, I put 3 or 4. Don't go over 4. Someone doesn't want to get an entire sheet of one image. So I did put a couple of the road trip things. This is just a sheet of mixed images. And here's another sheet just like it. So we're going to swap 8 10 by 10 inch squares. Do make sure you stamp on the fibrous side, not the shiny side. Do make sure you cut your squares to 10 by 10 inch. If your tissue is a different size than the Dollar Tree tissue, please consider cutting it to 10 by 10 inches. Then you're going to need 2 legal size envelopes. Okay? I'd like you to send me, you're going to send them in legal side envelopes. I can't spell. Okay, and I want you to send a self-addressed stamped envelope along with your 8 squares of images. Okay? Now, I'd like your squares of images all to be the same. It's easy to just take one stamp and stamp it 8 times on 8 different pieces of tissue. I will tell you that 8 pieces of tissue, the 2 envelopes, will all come for 1 stamp in the U.S. Okay? Now there's a problem with Canadian. I will have to have you send me a self-addressed envelope and do not stamp it, because your stamps, I will have to send it back with a U.S. stamp. I will do that. I will gladly do that. I am also going to put this information in the description down below. You're going to send all your images with your self-addressed stamped envelope in a legal sized envelope to me. And if you look down below, my email address is down below, and you can email me for my address if you do not have it. But it is Tanya McGuire, the number 2, at gmail.com. I am going to post this swap in my group, so if you are part of the group, my snail mail address is over there, and oh, we have to have a date. Sorry, I thought everything out and then forget parts of it. I need to have your images by April 15th. Okay, that's an easy date to remember, seeing as how it's tax day. It gives you 6 weeks to get them here. They're all coming to me. I will, just like the napkin swap did, I will swap them all out and send you back 8 10-inch squares of images. Please try to fill up your square with images. Don't get them on top of one another, but try to fill them up. Be mindful of wrinkles, because if your tissue is wrinkled, your image won't be clear. And if you have any questions, give me a holler, and I will answer them as best I can. Thanks for popping in, and I hope you are excited by this swap. I think it will be fun. I think we will all enjoy getting different images in our collection to use. And let me see, I think it's time for a quote from our 1001 Ways to Creativity. In our day-to-day lives, we tend to overlook things rather than look at them. Make a conscious effort to pay attention to the very tiniest of details. That's a really good quote. Okay, guys, have a great afternoon. Go have fun. Go make some art. And I hope you are going to play with us in this swap. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.